Hello,
Hello.
everybody. Hi, Anne Marie. Anne Marie's been
Hello.
chasing around her cute little. She's got the cutest little grandson that's about 3 years old. He's just gorgeous. But anyway, how are
hmm
you? How are you? How's
I'm
weather?
good. I'm good. It's really hot. We went from winter to summer, no spring.
Yes, that's very true. You got the heat on during the nighttime and the air conditioning on during the daytime. So, yeah, I think it's like that all over. But hopefully, the cold is past enough that the beautiful flowers aren't going to be killed off on the trees, and we'll get some fruit and things to be growing. So,
Yeah.
um, anyway, we are very, very excited about our guest that we have on tonight. We have our guest. His name is Larry Vorwerk. Vorwerk. I'm sorry. He is the world renowned author of the Bartholomew Method, Awakening to Oneness, How to Build the Most Important Relationship in Your Life. He is also the administrator to the Facebook page, Awakening to Oneness. He holds a degree in fisheries and wildlife biology, and he was a zoologist and zookeeper for 39 years, mostly in the state of Minnesota, at the Minnesota Zoo. He is a spiritual seeker and has had several out of body experiences as well as spiritual transformative experiences. And he felt compelled to write his book, and he is here tonight to share his story. So we would like to welcome Larry Vorwerk. Welcome,
Hello.
Larry.
Happy to be here.
We're so glad that you're here. I was wondering, how is it? How and why did you start your journey, and where has it taken you over the years?
Well, I'll start with my background a little bit. I was born in 1951, so I'm 71 years old now. I was raised Catholic by a very loving parents, but that Catholic upbringing just didn't ring quite true with me, especially as I got older. Went to college, had classes in world religions, and started to view other things. And so it really was in 1980 that this journey really began. I came up with an affirmation that I wanted to grow at the fastest rate possible that I could handle. And just be careful what you ask for because you'll receive it.
That's true.
Anyway,
Yep.
that definitely got me on my journey as such. And in the earlier years, I was just reading a lot of self help books and things along that line. But eventually, that led me into a more paranormal type experiences and what some people, at least in the old days, would call New Age material. And as such, well, I actually tell you how I really got started. I was in a library once, and the only other person in the library was the librarian. And as I was walking down this aisle, this book just fell off the shelf by itself. And it was by Ruth Montgomery called Strangers Among Us. And as I read that book,
I
it,
know that book.
yeah, it piqued my interest. And for the next 10 years, I started reading about a book a week. And over those years, I've read probably around 500 books on everything from UFOs to modern physics to pyramid powers and everything else in between. And after a while, all these subjects started interlocking and started making sense. And so it was like either none of this makes sense or else everything makes sense. And I go with the sense that it all makes sense. Um, so, anyway, in the earlier years there, I started writing some series of writings. I had my What If series that was about what if life was this way or that way? What would life be like? And all in a positive way. And as such, it continued on. And as such, I started reading more books and eventually started having some experiences that took me further. It started with back in 1988. I had an experience where I left my body and another soul literally merged with me. And with that merger, there was a sense of illumination and expansion and wisdom, unlike anything I had experienced before. Well, this continued for about 12 souls that merged with us. And at that point, the energy was so great, I literally was told I had to make a decision. Either I would come back to this physical realm, or else my physical body would burst into flames and I would leave this physical realm. Well, here I am, so you know what my answer was.
You came back.
I
Yes.
came back.
Yeah. Also, I wanted to make mention too, which is something I meant to mention in the beginning. If anybody throughout the program, we can kind of wait more towards the end. If you have any questions for Larry, please just put a little question mark in front of it so that we know that it's not just the chat in the room, but it's actually something that you would like to have him answer. So anyway, please go ahead.
Well, anyway, at that time, I had no idea who these other souls were that merged with me. It was an experience unlike anything I had before, or since for that matter, at least in this way. So anyway, over the next 9 years, I didn't think too much about it. But then at one point, I was going through a divorce from my first wife at that time, and she had moved back down to Iowa. And so one evening or one day, I was driving my youngest daughter back to Iowa to be with her mother. And it was kind of a foggy, rainy day. And as I was traveling down, all of a sudden, I got this internal voice of basically of the different souls saying they had been the one that merged with me 8-9 years earlier. Well, anyway, they were James, Philip, John, and other names. And I soon realized, well, these names were actually the apostles of Jesus. Well, anyway, it kind of surprised me. And I was like, who am I that they would merge with me? Well, anyway, at that time, I was dating my present wife, Nita Wolf, and she was living in the building with another couple that they knew. And so I went over to her house afterwards, after I had dropped my daughter off. And when I came up the stairs, the person that lived there said, who was psychic, said, whatever you experienced was the truth, and to take it in. So I did. I shared that experience with my now present wife, Nita, and I didn't think too much of it. But then this other party had talked to another psychic and said that I had been Bartholomew 2,000 years ago, and had been with Jesus at that time. Well, anyway, that kind of surprised me, and I didn't know what to think about that. So I didn't really do too much about that at the time. But over the next 8-9 years, about 9 other people came to me independently and told me that it was true that I was Bartholomew in that lifetime. So anyway, that got my curiosity up. So I had gone through hypnosis to go back to that time period. And the first recall I had of that time period was that I was a root crop farmer on the hillside while Jesus happened to be walking between villages at that time. And I always get emotional when I say this because it takes me back to that time period.
And it's beautiful.
Anyway, what had happened was Jesus called this seagull down to it, and the seagull landed on his hand. And I was kind of amazed by that, because usually seagulls don't come to your hand. And so I walked down to Jesus and asked him, how did you do that? And he said, with pure love. And I followed him after that.
Oh.
And like I said, since that time, I've had other past life recalls of that time period and have had different experiences around that. Some of that I have put into my book, The Bartholomew Effect, Awakening to Oneness. that you had mentioned earlier, Lynn.
Mhm.
I will mention at this point about that, I do give out the ebook free to anyone that is interested in it. All they have to do is messenger me and give me their email address, and I'll send it to them. Also, I do sell my book for the wholesale price of $10 plus postage. If you're in the United States, that's $4, or a total of $14. If you're out of the country, then it's $25 for postage as such. And you can contact me the same way.
Irene's that I just had up there is from Tokyo, Japan. So yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, over time then, I started channeling Jesus. We have a spiritual group that meets in our home once a month. Actually, this has been going on for almost 20 years now.
Beautiful.
We usually have anywhere, usually in the neighborhood of 12 people at a time, but it has been as much as 25 people at a time in our home. And it has varied over the years as far as what we all do, but it includes having speakers in, but also just having questions that we discuss among ourselves, maybe watching a video or something of a spiritual nature. And basically supporting each other and also supporting the earth. We usually do a healing session a lot of times just to send love out to the world, since it is so needed at this time.
Absolutely.
He's our brother.
Yeah. You'll see us acknowledging a few people as they come on, saying hello. So that's what we're kind of doing. But you're absolutely right. It is so needed right now. The time. There's just so much chaos going on and uncertainty, and a lot of it is an illusion, but people don't realize it. So it's really, really important that they get on track with oneness and to help them on their path.
When they fall from their illusion, they need to read and search information.
Absolutely.
That's the dark times, and everybody goes through them before their awakening.
That's true.
I think the key to all of this is the people to awaken to the truth of who we are,
Mm-hmm.
and that everything is interconnected.
Yes,
Nothing that isn't of God or source, whatever word you want to use for that greater power, but we are all part of that energy that I like to just call source or source energy.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And when we realize that there's nothing that's not connected, then we start to work for the good of the whole. And when we do
everybody
that,
does their own part.
Yeah, everybody does their own part and support each other. And we live in a world of duality, three-dimensional world of duality. And yet, like I said earlier, I like modern physics, being a scientist, natural scientist mainly. I always enjoyed reading modern physics and what it has to share, because a lot of it backs up a lot of the spiritual experiences and other type of experiences that a lot of people have. Anyway, over time then, I was getting interested in out-of-body experiences, and so I read a number of books on that subject, and had several out-of-body experiences since that time. One of them that I find very interesting is people wonder, okay, we go through many lifetimes, but after we've finished that, what do we do then? And, of course, we all go back to source and live in bliss, but that gets boring after a while. So we want to do something more, have other experiences, because we're basically God experiencing itself through our incarnation in this illusion that we call life here. But anyway,
actually, Terrence Beckham is from Australia. Hello, Australia.
So anyway, what I had an out of body experience that was very interesting. In that experience, I was told that after we pass on from individual incarnation, we merge with other souls to become the group consciousness of an evolving planet. And it's kind of like a soul enters the physical body of an embryo or a human at some point in that development. Well, that's the same thing with the planet as such. At some point in the development of a planet, these consciousness merge together as that consciousness of that planet, just like Earth or Gaia has a consciousness. And I was told, well, I'll backtrack a little bit. Several years ago, we went to the big wheel out in Wyoming. And at that time, I had an experience where I communicated with that other planet. And actually, both planets are is helping each other in their own evolution. And I've had a number of experiences around that. And over time, I've had more insight into this new planet and what's this all about. And basically, it's kind of like a new experience, a new experiment by Source to have individuals incarnate on this planet that already realize their oneness with Source. Now, normally when you come to that point, you just merge back with Source itself. But some individuals would like to have a bigger, more expansive experience in this illusion of physicality. And this isn't a fifth dimensional experience, unlike the third dimension that we're in right now, even though many of us are moving into the fifth dimension. And so this is why there's so much discrepancy between realities right now, between people. We have those that are stuck in the old energy of 3D reality, and then those that have moved on to 5D reality.
You need
Absolutely.
to get rid of their greed and ego.
Well, and addiction too. It holds them in the third
And
as
that's
well.
part of the greed and the ego of selfishness, because it's not all just one person.
Right. So anyway, getting back to that a little bit more is over time, like I mentioned, I had channeled Jesus at different times. And part of that is in my book too. But several years ago, something uniquely different happened. And that was I started to literally merge with Jesus, his energy. And with that is a sense of bliss and oneness, unlike anything else I've experienced. Which brings me back to an earlier comment when I merged with the other disciples back in 1988. I asked myself, why didn't I merge with Jesus at that time? And the answer was, if I had at that time, I wouldn't have come back.
You wouldn't, yeah.
It would, but now I know I have a mission on this earth at this time, and I have the courage and the strength to stay here until I accomplish what I came here to do. And I have the support of Jesus, literally, as well as the planetary consciousness in my next incarnation. I used to just call them the 60,000, but I thought I'd just condense it into just the PC, which is planetary consciousness. And that in the last year, I've also been communicating with that group. I'll mention a little bit more that came through with that, and that is that the individual souls that make up this planetary consciousness were sent out across the universe to have different experiences on different planets and different galaxies, bring back all of those experiences and merge it into one. And as such, I'm getting downloads from them at times It's hard to explain it exactly, but a lot of times when I'm making comments on my Facebook group, Awakening to Oneness, I feel their input coming through with the
Yes.
answers that I respond to.
Have
So
you seen
sometimes,
UFOs?
what?
Have you ever seen a UFO? Have you, or is it just a third eye type thing?
It's internal eyesight. I
Yeah.
haven't actually seen UFOs in the physical realm as such.
Right.
And I don't
Astral
consider
travel.
these UFOs. I just consider them highly developed entities or souls, basically. And basically, as time goes on now, I realize that that I wouldn't have. Well, I'll backtrack a little bit more. The first book I read, and I haven't shared this with too many people, but the first book that fell off the shelf for me, Strangers Among Us, talks about walk-ins. And usually it talks
There's such
about
things.
souls that trade places with somebody that wants out of their physical life. But
Mhm.
that didn't fit right for me. I always have been Larry or Bartholomew. But what did walk in was my high self. And I realized this happened because if it hadn't, I wouldn't have been able to merge with Jesus or the planetary consciousness like I have. And it's hard to describe this experience. Just know that it gives me great peace and great insight and great wisdom in the process. As such, the journey goes on. Where it ends, I have no idea. I feel like I kind of been told that I'll live to be somewhere around 100 years old or until I complete the mission that I have. Hopefully my physical body keeps up with it. I'm pretty healthy for my age, even though I do have a few minor issues from all my years of running and hiking and things like that. But anyway, this has kind of been my main journey as such throughout life. I really, as I was telling Lynn before we got started, I really felt like I came to this earth too soon up until about 2020. Actually, it was January 2020 that basically I was told this was why I came at that time, because my work really started at that time. This is right before the pandemic, or right as it was starting, actually. I wasn't even aware of the pandemic at the time that I got that message. But basically, all the years up to that point was mainly just to gather experiences and information and wisdom so that I could share that in my book, in my Facebook group, and in podcasts that I might do from time to time or other public speaking. And, just to let you know, I'm just one of many, many light workers here on this earth at this time. We live in a very interesting time period where we're truly transforming our world and reality from a 3D experience to a 5D experience.
We're really meeting up quickly.
Yes, we are. We are all starting to come together, and we're meeting. Yeah, exactly like Anne Marie said. We are finding each other, and it is a wonderful thing that we are coming together at this time, and it's necessary.
Yes, and we're all spread out all throughout the world, not even just the United States. We've got friends all over the world that are all. Everybody needs to shine their light to let everybody else know they're not alone. That's the biggest thing that I find. People think that they're crazy and they're not crazy. They all have stories like yours, in mine, and Lynn's. And the more everybody tells their story, the more they realize they're not alone. But so many people are afraid to tell their story because they're afraid of the people that are just don't want to hear it, that don't want to believe because they're stuck in that other side, you know. But now's the time to, it's about the collective conscience. It's not about the individual. And that's where I progressed this year, going fast, spinning fast.
This is one interesting thing about the media that we have, the internet. We literally can connect with people from around the world. And
Yes.
to just give you an example, the Facebook group that I have around 2,700 members right now. And they're literally people from all over the earth, from at least 30, 40 different countries. Even have somebody that lives in Antarctica. Not quite sure what she does or there, but all the continents are represented as such. And I'll mention another affirmation that I started 40 years ago or so and has come true. And this relates to this. And that is, the affirmation is, the world's wisest, most benevolent souls have entered my life. And they have. I've met the Dalai Lama, Greg Braden, and others. And a lot of unknown names, but are very spiritual and aware people. And if you really want to feel like you came home, visit my Facebook group. You'll find that it's a very loving, respectful group of wise people from literally around the world. And people submit posts that they have, their own comments and things along that line. And then I also try to comment as much as I can on most of the posts that I post, as well as some of my own writings from my book or from other writings that I have done. And have kind of a format. And anyway, please visit it. It's also listed.
Yeah, I did put the link on this page. I mean, on this StreamYard that we're all watching this from. In the description, I have both your links to your page.
Yes, it's running across the
and
ribbon.
It's running across the bottom also.
Yes, absolutely. When you were talking about your out-of-body experiences, you had mentioned that you had several of them, and I'm just curious about some of the other ones that you had.
Well,
if you don't mind sharing.
Yeah, I had one a couple years ago now, which was very interesting. And this is where science comes into play too. And this is, I had an experience where I went to a parallel universe. And modern physics backed this up now for the most part. And what had happened is I found myself 30 years in the past, but in another universe that was very similar to the one I had. And in this universe, I was back in my home that I grew up in, and my parents were there. And what was interesting, my parents in this dimension or this planet died about 20 and 18 years ago. So I had not seen my dad for 20 years or 18 years at the time when this happened. So all of a sudden I appeared in this alternate universe, parallel universe, in my old house. Things were pretty much the same, but there was a few differences. One was the calendar was different. The calendar had 9 days to the week, and the names weren't Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, like that. They had a different name to it. So anyway, my sister Linda was there, and I asked her for a clean piece of paper. Well, she kept giving me paper that weren't clean, so I kept asking for some. But in the meantime, my dad was there, and I hadn't hugged my dad for 17 years. So I asked my dad, "Can I give you a hug?" And he said, "Sure. What, like, what's the big deal? You see me all the time, But I hadn't seen her for 17 years. Well, this is an out-of-body experience where everything is as physical as me talking to you now. And so I gave my dad a heartfelt hug that I hadn't given for 17 years.
Oh,
Which was kind of interesting and surreal, really. Well, anyway, I came back to this universe, or this planet, and the next morning, I shared that story or the experience with my wife, who fortunately is on the same wavelength that I am. And so we bartered back and forth with comments and insights and things like that from time to time. And so things that might seem very unusual or strange to other people is just common knowledge coming back and forth between us. And which is a blessing, I consider, because
It is.
It is.
Yeah, it absolutely is. I do with my Bill. We are on the same wavelength that way, and it makes it so much easier because you can grow together with that. When you were talking about the last out of body experience, was that the one that you realized had come from the future?
No, that was a different one.
Okay. I want to hear that one too, but go ahead and finish with this one first. It's getting good. Oh, and by the way, people are loving you. You're getting a lot of positive comments. So they're very happy with what you're sharing tonight with them. So, yeah.
Yeah, the out of body experience that I had with my next lifetime was the one I talked about earlier. I'll share a little bit more about that lifetime and that future. I'll just mention I retired from the zoo 6 years ago now. And I thought, well, I'm retired now. I can take it easy. But Spirit came to me and said, we have another job for you. And that is to recruit people for this new planet. So, so basically, actually, the first person that I recruited was my wife's mother, who had passed on many years earlier. And I communicate with people that have passed on a lot, just like many other people have. They get the communication different ways. Sometimes it's just a internal voice that comes to you. Sometimes it's a feeling. Sometimes it might even be audible as such. But anyway, the way I like to explain the difference between those that have passed on to the other side and those that are in the physical realm is that those that have passed on to the other side are basically just in another room. And when you communicate, you're kind of yelling between the walls.
That's funny because I concur that. You actually have a question. Kristen Johnson wants to know, are you in meditation while you have your out-of-body experiences or in a hypnotic or I can't read that.
Hypnagogic.
Yeah, hypnagogic, I'm sorry, or but I'm having trouble seeing that it's blurring a little bit on my end. Hypnotic state.
Yeah.
I hope I said that right because I can't see it very well.
I would say
Or a dream.
I'm kind of in meditation. I'm kind of in meditation all the time. It's not what you necessarily would call the classical meditation where you're sitting and just emptying your mind, but I'm constantly in that other state of mind, so to speak, as I go throughout my day. For the most part, there are moments when I'm not, but every that's another issue that there's a lot of discrepancy is what is meditation and is there just
being in the now?
Yeah, there's
as long
many.
As you're in the right now, not in the past, not in the future. You're in the right now is when I meditate. When I'm right on that vibration.
Yeah, I mean, every moment can be a meditation. It doesn't have to be done in a certain way. And whatever works for one person is fine. It doesn't have to be the same way for another person as such. But anyway, getting back to the other planet, besides the people that make up, or the souls that make up the consciousness of the planet, there will also be many souls coming in as individual souls on this planet. The big difference is that, like I said earlier, is the people that incarnate will know their oneness. They will work for the good of the whole. They will communicate and work with the planetary consciousness, which I'm a part of.
Mhm.
And I might add, Jesus the Christ is the kind of like the CEO of the planet consciousness, the best way of putting it. And and the thing is, time isn't as we normally perceive it to be. It's not linear. I mean, it is linear when we're on this physical realm because it enables us to function. But as many people know, that the only time there is the present moment. And so we are many places at once, even though we may not be conscious of all those other places as such. And so anyway, another way of looking at past lives, probably the first issue I had the hardest time to overcome was the issue about reincarnation or having many lifetimes. And what I mean by that, like I said, I was raised Catholic, and Catholics believe you have one lifetime and that's it. Then you go to heaven or hell or wherever. Well, anyway, didn't buy into that. But anyway, the way I like to look at lifetimes is it's like dropping a rock or a pebble into a perfectly calm pond. And as the pebble or rock hits the water, you have ripples that come out. Well, each ripple is a different lifetime, but yet all the ripples exist at the same time. So it's a matter of where you put your focus. Other people ask, well, how come we don't remember all our lifetimes? Well, most of us probably had thousands of lifetimes or maybe even more. And if you had a recall of all those lifetimes, you probably couldn't function in this world as such.
Yeah, that's true.
Mhm.
But at the same time, many of us have had recalls of different lifetimes. I've probably had recalls of about a dozen. And usually we only have recalls of those that are important to know about in this lifetime. Definitely it was important for me to know my lifetime as Bartholomew, but I've had other lifetimes as a Viking sailor and a white person being raised by Native Americans and many other lifetimes. And most of them are pretty nondescript, uneventful sort of things. But they all had a message to impart in my present lifetime. A lot of times, if people have phobias for being, let's say, enclosed in places, maybe they had died in a cave in a previous lifetime, and they carry on that fear
That stamp. Yeah.
Stamp. So that explains a lot. I mean, even people that have great gifts of music and stuff probably had been a musician in a past lifetime and carried that forward as
I agree.
Yes, I agree also that they do carry stamps, sometimes even fears and, like you said, phobias and things like that. And it's good when they can take the opportunity to learn where it actually came from if they're open to it, to kind of solve it. Otherwise they carry it
Feel
into this lifetime. Exactly.
Let it
And
go. Learn where it comes from and let it go.
Yep, exactly. So yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Go ahead.
another thing that is important in this lifetime is a lot, as you know, we're going through a lot of rough challenges on this earth at this time.
Yes.
And part of that is because so many of us are going to advance into higher realms of
Very
being.
quickly. Mm-hmm.
We have to heal those karmic issues we've had in the past. And so we bring up a lot of those issues to resolve them in this lifetime so we can move on. And as such, we definitely have challenges ahead of us for many of us. And, timing is everything, and not everybody's going to awaken in this lifetime. And there's no right or wrong or good or bad to it. It's just whatever your timing is. But for those that really want to take advantage of this lifetime, there's not a better time to be born or alive than this lifetime, because there's so much potential for healing and growth to advance into higher realms of being.
That's true. Yep, that is very, very true. And and also too, I find that the people that have incarnated, our lights are very, very bright. That it is more difficult in certain circumstances because the dark wants to dub out the light. It wants to keep things the third dimensional, the way that it is. And we're trying to bring in that fifth dimension with the light that we have. So, people wonder why sometimes they have a little bit of a harder time than others. And part of it is because, you are here for a purpose. And sometimes the darkness does try to slow you down a little bit.
It does, and I think the issue, the way to proceed is to focus on what you envision to create in your life and reality.
Yes.
The love and the positive things. Unfortunately, the news and the media just tells you about all that's going wrong with the world. And if you focus on that, all you are doing is helping to perpetuate those issues and such.
I haven't watched the news in 7 years.
Yeah, I don't watch the news either. There is so much chaos. I figure by the time they figure out what they're doing, they could just give me the end result. I don't want to hear all the rest of the chaos and things, just the things that are going to affect me directly or my family directly, type thing.
It's all part of the illusion.
It is illusion. Absolutely. It is illusionary. It's not. Yeah, it's not the reality that we're headed for.
I'm not afraid.
So it's important too to have like-minded people in your lives,
Yes.
mainly to give you support and encouragement. And this is another reason why I, offer for our listeners to check into my Facebook group as well as other like-minded type ones out there. Because it will give you encouragement. It also gives you insight into how to live your life and to move forward in a positive way. We have too much of the negative feedback from people in general that we need to try to stay away from as much as possible.
Yes, I totally, agree with that. You had also mentioned that in one of your out-of-body experiences that you went into the future, and I'm really curious about that one. Would you mind sharing that one with us as well?
Well, that future was the one I was talking about.
Oh, okay.
Where I was part of the planetary consciousness. See, that's another thing. There's a lot of books about past lives, and yet you could go into the future just as easy as you can go into the past because there is no time as we know it. And they do intersect each other and support each other if you can. There was a book I read many years ago, and I don't recall the name of it, but they had taken people through hypnosis to future lifetimes. And it was interesting how they showed how the earth has evolved in different ways. And I won't get into it now, but it does show that there is potential for great growth and new ways of living and everything like that. I mean, you just look at technology, how fast it is changing as such. Some of the things that we can look forward to in the future, I believe, is, and a lot of people already do these things, is telepathy, communicating, trying to think of some of the different terms, teleport and things like this, where these things are possible. The one thing I came to awareness of over time was that literally anything and everything is possible. And we,
think of it and dream of it, you can do it.
Yeah, one of the biggest gifts I believe in is our imagination. You can imagine it, you can create it, basically. And the key is to focus on what you want to create with intention, and then put emotion into it, and then let it go and let the universe take care of the details, as I like to put it,
Yep,
I think
that's
that's the
true.
biggest thing of letting go and having faith in everything. You know, you guide yourself. When it's negative, you walk away. If it's not going right, go left.
And
But the letting go and having faith in,
mhm.
whatever you want to call it, that is where all the connection is. That's where the collective conscious meets, by our heartbeat, by our breath. It's all in the now. And there's a lot of people that are afraid of, to face things, to take responsibility. That's another thing that's a part of this. People are loving wrong. They're enabling instead of loving and allowing people to be who they are. Once we can allow people to be who they are and not enable them by making them trying to be the way we are or certain people are, I think it'll happen a lot faster. But people
Right.
are learning that.
Yeah, and I also think too, on that same note, I agree with you, Anne-Marie. And also they need to start listening to themselves. A lot of times, if they listen to that inner voice and that inner gut feeling and not question it, it's like the what ifs, the should haves, the could haves, the maybes, they don't matter. You need to listen to yourself and do what the feeling is that you need to either do or not do, for that matter.
That brings up an interesting thing about intuition, because I always like to think of it. Your intuition is your constant connection to source or God.
Yes, it is.
And the more you listen to it, the more stronger it gets.
The
Right.
louder, yes, it does.
In the earlier days when I questioned it, was it really my intuition or just wishful thinking, I would ignore it. And if it kept bugging me, then I knew it was my intuition. If it kind of dissipated and went away, I knew it was just wishful thinking. So now I basically know when it's my intuition. So I don't wait around, because I hate to keep getting bugged by source, that way.
Oh,
Yeah, and the I told you so's. When you were talking about the telepathy and the teleporting, when my mother passed away, she comes in frequently to visit, and I'll just share this a little bit for a moment. A lot of people have already heard this in the room. When she has come through as like a megaphone before, I've asked her, certain things, and she has said, that everything that they do on the other side is by thought. So if they want to go somewhere, they think of it and they just go. If they are wanting to be with a loved one somewhere on the planet, they can think of them, or that person thinking of them, and they go. She also made mention that they can be 6 places simultaneously. And so I found that was interesting too, that they could be multiple places at one time. But it's true, everything is done through thought. She even made mention when I asked her about eating. I said, of course they don't eat on the other side, but she came through and she said, but even through thought, even with that, if you think about it, the sensation of the taste of like brownies, for instance. I asked her if she missed the brownies that were, that she used to make on Earth, and she made mention that simply by thinking about that, the flavor and the sensation comes to them as if they are eating it, and that it seems very real, that way. So it's just very interesting when you mentioned the telepathy and the teleporting, because they do that in the 5th dimension all the time. We're just kind of, more cemented on the ground here because of the 3rd dimension, but that is changing. That is for sure.
Yeah, I want to bring up something that happened just recently. We had a friend that just passed away a couple weeks ago now, a week and a half. And before he passed away, and he knew he was gonna die because he was going off dialysis that was keeping him alive. And there's a long story behind that. But anyway, I had talked to him several times in depth about what to expect on the other side and everything along those lines. And it helped relieve the fear that he had, which a lot of people have fear about dying because of the unknown. But when he passed on over, I've communicated with him some. And I asked him, what's the greatest thing you can share with us over here? From the other side, from your perspective. And he said the love that is on the other side, that emulates to us when you are open to it. And basically, when I connected with them, I could feel that love, which is the same love I had felt before. And so everything is love. It's one word, but it has so many connotations that it's hard to grasp the true meaning of it as such.
That is so true. That is so true. We've got, being on this earth, people have gotten so far away from what the true meaning of love is. And so, money and greed and all of these other things that have interfered.
And it's the enabling the bad behaviors.
Yes, exactly.
Enabling the bad behaviors constantly instead of, I tell my kids all the time, you don't have to be the follower. You do what you know is right. And next thing you know, when you turn around, there's going to be people right behind you. You don't, just do what's right. Period.
Another topic I want to talk about a little bit is energy. And we live in a time when there's so much false information and information that you don't know really what is true. And what is very helpful for those that are awakening or those that develop it is being able to pick up the energy of people's statements or people's actions as such. And basically, a lot of times when I meet somebody new, I can pick up their energy, their intentions without them even saying a word. And that will give you some person guidance of what to avoid or not to avoid as such. And I think as more people awaken in this way, that it'll help offset all this, conspiracies, theories, and everything else that is thrown out there that just bring fear and uncertainty to people's way of thinking and minds.
I totally agree with that. I absolutely do agree with that. And I'm glad that it's shifting and that, energetically, it's so important. It's so important what you think. And like Anne Marie had mentioned before, taking responsibility, all of that is important. And not, even when, people cross over and they talk about their life review, they're not being judged. They judge themselves. And it's actually more effective that way, because if somebody's telling you that you did something wrong, you're calculating in your mind and thinking all the reasons why you did it, but if you're judging yourself and put in that person's shoes, you have to own it. You have to feel the repercussions and the rippling of what you did. So, the energetic stuff is so important. And like you said, people on this earth, you can size them up pretty quick, when you're sensitive that way. And that is so true. And again, it's listening to your gut as well.
Yeah.
Intuition.
Mm-hmm.
That kind of goes a little bit with the process of spiritual awakening. Is in the early stages, most people will seek that answers and information from outside themselves, like through books or speakers, and that's fine. But at some point in your awakening process, it then becomes an internal journey, basically.
Yes.
Doesn't mean that you don't still pick up things from other people, but ultimately it's your own inner high self that is giving you guidance and direction in your life as such.
That is absolutely true. That is so very much true. You had also mentioned your lifetime as Bartholomew. Is there any of that you want to go into detail and share with us?
Yeah, I'll share a few stories. We had another friend of ours that had moved to Oregon. And anyway, we were out there visiting them several years ago, and we were sitting down for breakfast, and all of a sudden I got this recall of an episode in that lifetime where this other person was a young girl of about 9 years old. And in this recall, she had a rose that she wanted to hand to Jesus, but there was a crowd around there and she couldn't make her way to Jesus. Well, as Bartholomew, I was walking behind Jesus as well as a few of the other disciples. And I noticed this little girl, and I knew what her intention was. So I guided her to Jesus, and the little girl gave the rose to Jesus. And Jesus kissed the girl on the forehead and said,
Oh,
"You'll never forget me." And she hasn't. And it impacted her life in that lifetime as well as the present lifetime. And it was a very emotional recall. And that's one thing that I always use as a confirmation that something is true, is if something comes through to me, I usually have a sensation or emotional impact that goes through me that gives me that confirmation. Uh, as my wife a lot of times will say, if I'm excited, I just blink my eyes. And the reason why I don't verbally or expressively show a lot of emotion most of the time is because most of the emotions in this earth plane are so minor compared to the emotions that I feel from the other side. And I do get very sensitive and emotional, but it's usually in other realms of a being that brings the strongest emotions to me. But another thing, I'll give you another story, which is interesting. Years ago, when my book first came out, I was profiled in the Edge magazine, which is a spiritual magazine in the Twin City area where I live. And a couple years later, there was another person interviewed in the magazine, and I looked at his face, and I said, "I know this guy." And I had never met him in this lifetime. So anyway, I just felt called to email him and offer him a copy of my book. And anyway, to make a long story short, he was Peter the disciple in that lifetime years ago.
Oh, wow.
And he had written 5 or 6 books. A lot of them had to make corrections to the Bible, let's put it that way. And I
There are a
won't,
lot of them.
yeah, I won't reveal the name because I don't know if he would want me to or not. But he lives in another state. I've never met him in person. We've communicated back and forth by email and stuff for a while. And but anyway, it's that intuition that comes through a lot of times where you just know something. You don't have any way of knowing how you know it. It's just that you do.
The clear.
yeah, that deja vu kind of moment.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Mhm.
Wow, that's amazing that you were able to come together with him and find that you were both around at that same time back in the day. That's very, very interesting in itself. And speaking of the Bible too, and when you had mentioned before about reincarnation, there were books in the Bible originally about reincarnation, but they were taken out.
Right.
And part of that is also part of that same control, controlling the masses and keeping the herd all going in one direction kind of thing with no questions asked. So, I mean, and they're doing that in many other ways now too. So it just, yeah, definitely. So yeah.
Just talk a little bit about that bit, is that everybody's is on their own path and they're in the right place at the right time. And in some of the earlier stages of growth and awakening, religion and certain philosophies are beneficial for that person. But at some point, when a person awaken enough, then they realize that they have to go beyond traditional religion as such.
Yes.
And some of those religions are like,
yes.
And I mean, I started that way myself. I started out as Catholic growing up, and eventually went to a Unity church, which was kind of like a bridge. And eventually just most of my growth now has been internal and communication with the other side. And each person has their own journey to take, and whatever their journey is, right?
Never compare it to somebody else's, because your journey is completely supposed to be different.
Right.
It's all about the love, passing on the love.
Yes, that's true, and definitely, and learning about love and all of those things. But yeah, and you had also mentioned that you had some other experiences and stories that you wanted to share, and we're enjoying those stories. So please
Oh
continue.
yeah, please.
Well, trying to think of other ones I've had. Well, I'll mention a little bit about my first out of body experience that I had
Okay.
many years ago. And like I said, in that experience, I found myself above my body in the room. And when I finally found myself out of the body, it was like most people get fearful and come right back in. But for me, being a scientist, I was excited to see what I could explore. So I
Hmm.
decided to go to a friend's house, and I just literally flew across the night sky with my arms out, just like a bird or something. And yet, in a out of body experience, you're just as conscious as and physical as you are here. And the biggest impact that had on me was on that first one was first off, we are more than just this body. You know,
Hmm.
if we can
That's for
be
sure.
elsewhere and just as conscious as here now, then we're so much more expansive, and that this this lifetime is really just a dream, just like our dreams that we have at night, and those dreams. Are just as real as this lifetime in some ways. It's just a matter of what level of consciousness you're at that experience. And one of my most exciting one was I was a point of consciousness going across the cosmos, watching galaxies pass me by, and that was pretty exciting. I didn't even need a spaceship to go out there to see the cosmos. So uh, that was exciting. I've also been being a zookeeper. I work with
Mhm.
birds and mammals and primates and other things, and you always wonder, well, what is it like to swing from a tree from vine to vine without fear of falling? Well, one time I had a dream or out of body experience in a sense that I was a different type of primate or person, still humanoid like, but on a different planet. And I was in a tribe of other beings, and we entered the forest and climbed these trees. I started swinging from one tree to the next on the vines without any fear of falling. So at least now I knew what a primate monkey felt like swinging around. One other time I was a seagull out at sea and flapping my wings just like a bird. So I knew what it was really like to be a bird. Native America, Native Americans sometimes will have that flashback where they will become other creatures as such. So it
Yes,
just shows
definitely.
you that we are so much more expansive than we think we are. The only thing that limits us is the limitations we put on ourselves.
That is so true. Yeah.
And where it stops, well, it never stops. I mean,
Nope.
Hmm.
that's the exciting things. And I think the key is to be open to other experiences, be out, try to live outside of the box. A few years ago, I wrote a series of, I don't know, about 19 different out of the box thoughts, food for thought outside of the box. So I brought up different subjects like, what if you lived life like this or that? What would that be like? Or things along that line. And I've posted them in my Facebook group from time to time. I usually do one of my own writings every Friday in my group. And
I like how you post pictures and you tell people to comment a title for them.
yeah. So yeah, a little bit about my Facebook group too. I on 3 days a week I put questions, kind of spiritual, open-ended questions for people to answer. Usually a deeper type of question, as such, to get people to think outside the box, so to speak. And also I have a healing post on Tuesdays, and then on Sundays and Thursdays, I also list all the new members to the group, and I usually have somewhere around 10 to 20 new members per week. That might change after this interview.
I have a
But
feeling.
yeah. And then also on Sunday, I started to do list a book that has influenced me in my journey and say a little bit about it. And hopefully other people comment on it too, what they learned from the books. Because we can learn from each other. And that's one of the biggest
That's
points
what it's about.
about having the Facebook group is just to support each other on our journey, and we all
Walk
have
each other home.
That's true. Yes.
yeah
Yeah, that is so true. And again, like Anne Marie had mentioned earlier in the show too, it's bringing people of like minds together at this time where we're compelled. I mean, we're just being attracted to one another and coming together at this time. So definitely, like the format that you have on Facebook is definitely very much needed at this time.
that brings up another interesting point. I read one time that only actually moved to 3% of the world population are on this awakening process. Okay, that's not too many people. Well, it's a lot of people, but in proportion to the number of people in the earth, not the 8 billion or so, that's not too many. And yet, within my life, I would say 50% of the people I know are on this awakening journey as such. And so what happens is we attract like-minded people in our lives. And those that aren't of the same vibration usually will drop from our lives. And that includes family members sometimes.
That is very true.
Very.
Totally agree with that.
And yet the universe doesn't like a vacuum. And so when you lose people, you will also gain people.
That's true.
So this constantly happens throughout your lifetime, basically. And we have all the algorithms on the computers nowadays, so you only get fed what you put out there, basically. And they talk about how this is damaging to people, kids and things like that, because of bullying and things like for bullying and other types of negative things. Well, it also works in the other way, because I only post positive things. And if you were to look at my home page, you would think the world's going in a great direction, no problems, because I only get fed back what I put out there, basically.
Well, and that is so important too, is to even people relating to that are putting that positive, even as they're reading it in their mind, the energy is radiating as their in thought patterns, and that positive energy is then released into the atmosphere. So having a platform like what you have is very, very important, since during this time there are so many people that are stuck in the drama, and their mental capacity and energy is being put out into the universe of more of the drama and chaos. And with yours, it's just the opposite, which is so important too. People don't realize that even when they're reading something, how they have to be responsible for, that's my sweetie, how again responsibility comes into play, but also to be responsible for what you're thinking, what you're reading, and even what you're watching on television. You're watching some murder scene or something, you don't realize that you are catching that in your mind and you are manifesting it outward. So you have to be really, really responsible and careful with that.
Yeah.
So anyway, did you you had already mentioned, how people can get a hold of you and things like that. And did you have anything that you wanted to tell us about the somebody just said that they just joined your awakening to oneness, which is wonderful.
Yes,
were there any other of the Bartholomew stories that you have to tell? I know you mentioned the one about the little girl with the rose. I'm just curious about, the lessons and things during that time that you may have, picked up or learned.
Yeah. When a person comes to know Jesus, so much been misinterpreted or spread that wasn't truthful. And what I mean by that is Jesus was all about love. And as I in my earlier days when I first channeled Jesus, it was interesting because Jesus was Jesus and I was me. But as time went on, I felt Jesus' love so deeply that the only response was to merge with him. Literally, you have to merge with love because that's what you are too.
Very,
And
very true.
And that truly is also true for everyone else.
It is.
It's hard to. Society
It's the
has
highest
a.
vibration.
Yeah, it's
Excuse
all
me.
about vibration, and society has all these connotations of what love is and what relationships should be.
Mm-hmm. They
And yet,
do.
at some point, you get to the point where you love everyone, you love everything. You know, it doesn't mean you express it exactly in the same way to different people, but that energy is the same. And
You don't
when
have to agree to a love.
right, and when you have that energy, that's when oneness happens. There
That's
is no
true.
separation.
No, and the thing is too, a lot of times people have issues with love because they don't feel worthy for whatever reason. And some of the healing that's coming through now also is very, very important for people so that they can reconnect with that. A lot of traditional religion and things have absolutely destroyed some of these things because there were so many
Hurtful.
boundaries. Yeah, boundaries and these.
Hurtful.
Yeah, exactly. Even people are avoiding crossing over because they're afraid of that they're not worthy, that they're going to go to the proverbial hell type thing, so they're choosing not to. But it just you know there are issues with that as well, that people have lost their way because they don't feel worthy, and that's very sad. And hopefully shows like this will help people to reconnect and get them back on their path.
Right. Here's another gift that I came up with several years ago, and I'll repeat it here. I posted it on my Facebook group, and that is, why reinvent the wheel? And what I mean by that is, we are all God, we're all connected, we all have a high self, we have life experiences, and we learn from those experiences as such. But why not share those experiences with others? And so what I came up with is, I offer my high self to anyone that's open to it, to tap into my high self, to learn the experiences that I've had on this life, on this planet and all other planets, so that they don't have to go through the same physical experiences in their lifetimes, because they had tapped into my experiences because I offered it freely. And because I merged with Jesus and one with Jesus, you also will gather his experiences and his love and oneness too at the same time. And it's a two-way street. I offer it to anyone that's open to it, and I'm open to receiving from anyone else that's open to giving their high self to be tapped into by me.
I've got a question for you too, as far as the higher self and things like that. There are a lot of beautiful souls that are emulated as masters and teachers, Saint Germain, Archangel Michael, and those like that. Where do they fall into? Where do you feel that they fall into the consciousness that you've experienced?
Yeah, how do I put this? there are many expressions of source out there: angels, guides, avatars, whatever you want to call them on. They're all essence of God itself. They may have little different purposes or different experiences as such. And anything that is of a higher vibration, I say be open to, to take in. And you can tell that just by the energy that they give off as such.
I think it has a lot to do with balance. You have to let things go in order to get new things. Your life runs by, good and bad. Not everything that's good is really good. Not everything that is bad is really bad. And it's that collective conscious has a lot to do with balance. Also, you have to have balance in your life to grow. You got to let things go to get new things. You got to, I tell people all the time that you have to, if you want something new in your life, you have to you got to make room for it. Because
Right.
if you have too much of any one thing, it's not good. If you don't have enough of it, something, it's not good. We all have to learn how to, keep balance in our life so we can show others how to do it. Also, it's not just about the person as a individual. That's where the ego gets big. And this new 5G world, or whatever however the wording is, we are all on our paths. We all separately have our own purpose and our own learning to do, and we are all a beacon, and we really need to shine so other people know where to go. That's why we're very happy to have you on the show tonight, because like I said, I bet I like your group page too, and it reminds me a lot of my group page, which is Rising of the Phoenix.
Yes, it is.
Definitely.
Yeah, and if you get a chance to, please go on Anne Marie's site and look. I think that you'll be very impressed with how well that she's done with that, and in the same paralleling you in the same sense that you both are kind of on the same mission that way. I mean, we all are on the same mission, and like Anne Marie said, however, we do it in different ways, and then that's okay.
And that's fine.
So
that's perfect.
Yeah, we're actually running into the last 15 minutes or so of the show. Is there anything else that you want to express or to convey, to have get out there, before we close off?
Well, one thing I might mention, which I do on my Facebook group and a lot of places don't, is that I promote other Facebook groups, other books that are of the same focus, basically, that I have on my group, because it gets back to where we're really trying to support each other,
Exactly.
And there's so many groups out there that is so much about, greed or what they can get out of it, and they put down other people and other groups, and it goes against everything I believe in.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I share podcasts, all kinds of podcasts. I want everybody to share who they are, spotlight themselves, any kind of services, any kind of books, all that. That's what it's all about, sharing who you are so somebody can find you.
That's right. That's absolutely true. That's all good things. So, as far as your book, you did explain that people can get it to you for free as an ebook.
Yeah.
You had also mentioned that if they want to purchase it in paperback, they simply have to pay basically the cost of the printing of the book, and that they can contact you through the email that is coming across the bottom ribbon to reach out for the paperback. And he's adding on the shipping, of course, which is about $4 within the United States, $25 for the United Kingdom, as well as any of the other areas. We do have a person in here from both, was it Japan? Japan and Australia are in tonight with us. Thank you so much for coming in. Also, I wanted to take a minute to let Anne Marie, again, she's mentioned her page a couple of times, and any other way that they can get a hold of you, Anne Marie.
Yes, pretty much just Rising of the Phoenix, or underneath my name, Anne Marie Young.
There you go. And of course, I'm Lynn Monet, www.lynnmonet.com. I do have a website. We have the Synchronicity every Tuesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We have a guest that'll be coming on next week, Dave Scott from SOR Radio in Canada. Woohoo! And he's going to be on with us, as I said, next Tuesday. We're really looking forward to that. We also have a couple of other things that are coming up during the month that are, we've got Brandon Cooper coming on the 18th, John Russell on the 25th, as well as, and then we go into May with Kat Ward and a lot of other guests that we're going to be having on as well that you don't want to miss. All good information. You can also go back and watch any of the YouTube videos the YouTube programs that have already been taped. We've had some previous ones with Dr. Renee Nagel and also Dr. Al Santoriga and Dr. Mike on there as well that are conveying a lot of similar information that the same as Larry has also conveyed here to validate and to show that we're all together on the same path. And let's see here. I'm just checking one more thing. Also, as if you are looking for me, I also do a co-host to Journey Through the Gate with Cisco Murdoch on the last Sunday of every month, and sometimes I'll throw in an extra one in there. So there are other ways to also reach out to us. And so I just wanted to check one more thing, Jerry. If is there anything else that you didn't get a chance to talk about that you still wanted to say before we sign off for the night?
Well, I think I pretty much covered most of the topics and things. There's always more things that I could talk about, but they're not coming to mind right at the moment as such. I might mention that if somebody is really interested in having questions, that they can email me or messenger me, and I try to respond to people as much as I can. I'm retired, so I have more time than I used to, but I do have a busy life and have a full, balanced life. Being a Libra, I always like balance in my life, so I'm hiking, gardening, painting, and doing spiritual stuff in between. I might mention I'm just an ordinary person like everyone else. I'm no different than anyone else. Just have more of a wider viewpoint of some things in life than a lot of people have, maybe.
There you go. There you go. And speaking of Libra, actually, we have Mercury retrograde coming up, people. Beware of the Mercury retrograde. If you are not familiar with it, you may want to read up on it. It's a time that you do not want to purchase something new. Communication is screwy. Make sure you keep your receipts, because whatever you purchase during that time, you may not like after it goes direct. It is going in on the 21st. It's going to be a long one. We're coming into the shadow of it, actually, the end of this week. We're in that 2-week shadow period, as well as it's going to pretty much cover the entire month of May. So anything that you need to purchase, do it now, definitely, before that happens. And we're going to be signing off tonight. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming and being a part of our group. And thank you, Jerry, for being our guest on our show tonight.
Yes,
I'm Larry.
I'm sorry.
Larry.
I'm sorry, Larry.
Larry.
I apologize.
It's a long day.
Yes, I apologize because I was just looking at my calendar because I have something coming up with Dr. Larry Marvinsky. So Dr. Jerry Marvinsky. Now I'm getting the names. Mercury retrograde. We can blame it on that already. We are in the shadow, and I think I'll just shut up now. And thank you so much, Larry, for having us, being on our show. So good night.
Thank you for having me, and I'm glad that I had the chance to share some of my story and experiences with the public here. And hope to hear from some of you that have listened in tonight. And thank you again for having me.
Thank you so much. Good night.
Good night.
Night.